So what is a fraction? A fraction is an equal part of one whole object. Take a look at this cookie. If I cut this cookie into two pieces, I have 1/2 up on the top and 1/2 on the bottom. Each one of those pieces is an equal sized share of the cookie. The top half is the same size as the bottom half. You write the fraction 1/2 like this, 1/2. Another way of saying 1/2 is 1 out of 2. If you ate the top piece of cookie, you could say you ate 1/2 of the cookie or 1 out of 2, because I've now cut that cookie into two pieces. This 1 on the top of the fraction is called the numerator. The 2 at the bottom of the fraction is called the denominator. The numerator talks about how many pieces of that whole object you are identifying. The denominator talks about how many pieces there are all together. So in this instance, we talked about eating 1/2 of the cookie, and altogether there were 2 pieces. So 1 out of 2 is how you would write 1/2. So let's talk about dividing shapes into fractions or into equal parts. In the previous screen, we divided a shape into halves. That means in a fraction, you're cutting a shape into 2 pieces. And our example was that we ate 1 out of 2, so we made the fraction 1/2. Okay? So again, if you divide something in the halves, you're actually dividing it into 2 pieces. So your bottom number on your fraction will always show how many pieces you have cut that object into. We could also divide an object into 3 pieces or into thirds. If I took this rectangle and divided it into 3 pretty equal pieces, the best I can do without a ruler or measuring, I now have 1/3 at the top, I have 1/3 in the middle, and I have 1/3 at the bottom. If I cut this rectangle into 3 pieces and label each piece is called 1/3. Now altogether, I have 3 of them. I have 3/3. The top one is 1/3, the middle one is 1/3, and the bottom one is 1/3. So I'm talking about the fraction 1/3. I could, however, also say I'm speaking now about the top 2/3 of this shape, in which case I could write a fraction that says 2/3. That means I have circled 2 out of 3 equal parts of that rectangle. We can do the same thing with fourths. If we divide a shape into 4 equal pieces, our fraction would have a 4 on the bottom. That would be the denominator. And if I tried to divide this rectangle into 4 equal pieces, it would look like that. This is 1/4 of the rectangle. This is 1/4 of the rectangle. Here's another, and you guessed it, we have 4 of those. Each piece is called 1/4 of this rectangle. If I'm talking about the bottom piece, that's 1/4 of the rectangle. However, if I talk to you about the bottom two pieces, go back to my red, if I'm talking about both of these now, I have two of them, right? That would be called 2/4. And you may be noticing the larger the piece gets, or the more pieces it's cut into. What if I said, oh, now I'm talking about the bottom three? Well, that's 3/4. There's one more fraction I would like you to see, so I'm going to take this rectangle and again cut it into 4 equal pieces. And as we mentioned before, this is 1/4 of the rectangle. Here's another 1/4. Here's another 1/4. And another 1/4. We cut it into 4 pieces so that bottom number on the fraction is a 4. Each piece is called 1/4. Now, if I took this whole shape, if I wanted to take all 4 of those pieces, I would have 4/4, wouldn't I? There's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. So my fraction would look like this, 4/4. Well, as you heard me just say a minute ago, 4/4 is the same as the whole shape, the whole piece. So if that was a graham cracker and I ate 4/4 of it, then that means I ate the whole cracker. Let's have a look now at some shapes. These happen to all be circles that are divided into equal parts. They are cut into equal parts, and one or more of the parts have been shaded or colored in gray. If we start up at the top with the one that has been already done for us, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 parts in this circle, which is why we have a 4 at the bottom of our fraction, and one of those parts has been shaded in gray, which is why we have the 1 at the top. Okay, so the top number of the fraction is going to tell us how many parts are shaded. The bottom number of that fraction will tell us how many parts there are altogether. So let's take a look at this next one. Okay, remember what I said, that top number on the fraction that we need to create is going to tell us how many shaded parts. So that will be a 2, correct? I want you to think about these, see if you can think of the answer before I even say it. Now, the number that's going to go on the bottom is going to be the number of how many parts there are in all. And that would be a 5. There are 2 gray parts out of 5 parts in all. The way that we say that fraction is 2/5. Okay, let's come down here and look at the next one. The top number is going to tell us how many parts are shaded, because that's what the question is asking us, the fraction of the shaded parts. We have 1 shaded part. How many altogether? 3. The way that we say that fraction is 1/3. All right, let's go over here and look at the next one. How many shaded parts? 1. And then that bottom number, the denominator, is going to be, again, a 5. 1/5 of that circle is shaded. Let's try another one. Can you guess the bottom number? Right, 2/4 of this circle is shaded. Let's take a look at the next one. See if you can get it before I can. Three-fourths of that circle is shaded. Another way I could say that is 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 parts were shaded. Let's go here. Two-thirds of that circle is shaded. Try here. Four-fifths of that circle is shaded. Let's try the last couple. You got it? 3/5, or 3 out of 5. And here we are again. We've seen this before. This is the one that, even though it seems pretty simple, can be tricky, because we don't say 1, 2, or 1 tooth, do we? This one is called 1/2. You don't really hear this number at the bottom. 1/2 of that circle is shaded. You should have noticed that in all of the fractions, the bottom number, the one that we call the denominator, is a larger number than the numerator. It's larger than the top number. Okay, now we are going to practice taking a whole shape and cutting it into equal pieces, and then labeling those pieces. This is something that you need to learn how to do, so please listen carefully and practice along with me. Okay, first we're going to start on the green rectangle, and I would like to cut that shape into 3 equal pieces. We're going to cut that shape into thirds. So I'm going to do the best that I can to make 3 equal-sized pieces. Okay, if you first try and it looks really, really bad, just erase and try again to make 3 equal-sized pieces. Now I could go with the lines that I just made there, or I could also do it this way. Either way, those pieces are the same size, just as close as I can get them to being the same size, okay? So let me show you one more time. Either direction will make about the same size pieces. Now, of course, we're not using a ruler, so they're not going to be perfect. All right, so now that I have them cut, I have the shape cut into 3 equal pieces, I need to label them. So remember, I have 3 pieces all together, so that means my fraction will have a 3 at the bottom. Now this first one is 1 out of the 3, so it's 1/3. Each piece is going to have a 3 at the bottom of the fraction because we have 3 pieces cut. So each one is 1/3 of the shape. That's how you correctly label the shape that has been cut. Okay, now let's take a look at the blue circle. I would like to cut this circle into 2 equal parts. And I chose to cut it from side to side. Of course, it would also work to cut it from top to bottom. That also cuts it into 2 equal pieces. To label each piece, I need to put the number at the bottom that tells how many pieces there are all together. And remember, this is that one that you don't really hear that number 2 at the bottom. This is the one that is called half, 1/2. So this piece is 1/2 of the circle, and this piece is also 1/2 of the circle. So you should notice now that when we label the parts, they all have the exact same fraction. Each one has the same 1/2 fraction in it. Okay? Let's go down to the red circle now, and I want to cut this into 4 pieces. So an easy way I can do that is to cut it into half, and then cut it into half again the opposite direction. Now I have 4 equal pieces. Well, the bottom of my fraction then is going to have a 4. remember that denominator tells us how many pieces there are in the whole thing. We have 4 pieces, so each fraction is 1/4 of the circle. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4. Again, each piece has the same exact label. Okay? Let's look at this square at the bottom. And since we have talked about lines of symmetry, you might know something about squares. If I wanted to divide this square into halves or halves, I could divide it that way, or I could divide it that way. I could also divide it this way, and you're probably predicting the next one. I could divide it that way to divide it into 2 pieces. There's so many choices with a square because of those lines of symmetry that you have learned about. Okay, I could also divide that square into 4ths, and since you know those lines of symmetry, you know I could divide it into 4ths that way as well. So that's the cool thing about squares, is it could be cut into pieces in a variety of ways. Again, I will show you how it could be divided into thirds, into 3 pieces. I could also go this direction, okay? So when you're dividing a square, you have choices. Really, when you're dividing all these shapes into equal parts, you have some choices to make. There's not a wrong way. It doesn't matter if you go side to side or up and down, as long as you label them correctly. So in this situation, I'm leaving it into 3 pieces. That means each piece is 1/3. The important thing here to remember is that the bottom number of all of these fractions, that denominator, tells us how many pieces that shape was cut into altogether. All right? Okay, good luck with your work in fractions and keep practicing. You're doing a great job.